to be treated with
It's the
respect.
stupidest thing I've ever heard. Only an idiot would do it that way, and if you think for 1 minute...
I demand to see the manager. I'm spending a lot of money, and I shouldn't be.
You are. Nobody talk to me in that tone of voice. If I don't start seeing something,
Just fix it. You're responsible for this headache in the first
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you and welcome. My name is Bill Crawford, and here today we're going to talk about conflict, resolving conflict, dealing with conflict, moving from chaos to calm. Or, put another way, dealing with difficult people versus them dealing with you. I don't know, anybody ever dealt with any difficult people? They're everywhere, aren't they? It's amazing. I don't know. And have you noticed how chaotic it can be in this sense? So another way we could look at this is dealing with conflict without losing your head. Because I think it's fair to say that when we find ourselves in conflict, we often might lose our head. We'll say something we really didn't mean, we'll do something we wish we didn't do, or we really won't say what needs to be said. So today we're going to look at conflict from three perspectives. Number one, what are the underlying causes of conflict? How can a simple disagreement turn so quickly into what seems like a vicious cycle that almost seems to feed off of itself? Number two, when you find yourself in the middle of a conflict, how can we deal with that person in a way that not only resolves the conflict, but actually taps into their internal motivation to hear what we have to say as valuable? And number three, how can we interact with people more proactively in the beginning to actually diffuse conflict before it starts? Now, I'm going to be talking about difficult people today because I'm going to assume that everybody out here is probably pretty good at dealing with normal people, right? I mean, folks that are willing to sit down with you and have a normal conversation, even when there's a disagreement. If someone's willing to sit down with us, we're probably pretty good at that. It's that difficult person, isn't it? Kind of gets under our skin. So here's what I'd like you to be doing. Start thinking of the adjectives you would use to describe any difficult person you have ever encountered, right? Now, this may not be the adjectives you would actually say to their face, okay? I mean, but way deep down in the pit of your stomach, you know, when you're dealing with this person, think of the adjectives you might be using. If you're like most of us, you think of them as rude, obnoxious, loud, arrogant, demanding, rigid, crazy, and we could probably spend the rest of our time together making this list, couldn't we? So here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to imagine in your mind that this represents all of the difficult people you've ever encountered. So if you had some adjectives that aren't on this list, just imagine they are, and it will work. Now, I think it's also important to recognize that when we find ourselves dealing with them, we find ourselves sometimes reacting in certain ways. Not so much how we should react, but way deep down in the pit of our stomach, you know, when we're dealing with these rude, obnoxious, loud, arrogant, demanding, rigid, and crazy people. How do we find ourselves reacting? Well, we become defensive, frustrated. Notice how frustrating it is to deal with one of these folks? We sometimes get loud, trying to get louder than them, or we withdraw. It can be kind of a fight or flight experience. We feel superior sometimes. Don't you know who you're dealing with, you know? Confused, like, why are you treating me this way, you know? And then we get crazy. Now, here's something really, really important. These are the difficult people, and we are the nice people. Now, why would I say that they're the difficult people and we're the nice people when it kind of looks like we're doing the same thing? Because they started it, didn't they? I mean, isn't that true? I mean, remember when you were a little kid and you had a conflict? Well, they did. We were having a perfectly wonderful day. They came into our lives. They did that, and we found ourselves doing that, which would be bad enough if it stopped there. But have you noticed that it doesn't? Because when they do this and we do that, what do? More, right? Don't you think they become even more rude, obnoxious, loud, arrogant? Which, of course, has us reacting again. Which, of course, has them becoming more difficult. And we react, and they become more difficult, and react, and difficult, and react, and difficult, react, and difficult, react, and difficult, react, and difficult. Until we create what I call the cycle of conflict. Does this look familiar to anyone here in the room? Yes, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize how challenging it can be to be caught in that cycle of conflict. I mean, let's think of the problems that might exist if this cycle of conflict became our relationship with that person. Well, obviously communication would stop, right? And productivity, or if we had to deal with them in any way effectively, they wouldn't be listening to anything we had to say. And if we really needed information from them, they wouldn't be giving it. So that's one of the problems. Second problem is, they'll probably go tell somebody. Have you noticed that? Because this is really interesting. Guess who they see as the difficult person? Us, exactly. They say, well, they just got defensive, frustrated, and withdrawal. One of them looked really confused, didn't know what was going on. In other words, they see our reaction to them as us being the difficult person, and they go tell somebody. And you notice how challenging it can be to have someone who is out there spreading negative PR about you or your department or your organization. I mean, it's amazingly problematic. Now, also, I think it's important to recognize is this cycle of conflict can be very stressful, right? This is my second PBS special. The first one was called All Stressed Up and Nowhere to Go. And in speaking to dealing with stress, a lot of people talked about how difficult people really were problematic in their lives and created a lot of stress. I mean, just imagine this. You're sitting in your office or your home or you're being just fine, and all of a sudden this person comes into your life and they're all upset and they're all difficult. You're fine for a while, but all of a sudden you seem to catch it, right? And all of a sudden you're doing this, and they could even leave the room and you're still doing it, you know? And then someone else will come in and say, excuse me, you go, what do you want? In other words, we can take this into our next encounter with our significant other or, you know, our colleague or our coworker, or again, we save it up and take it home, right, where we kick the dog or something like that. So we got to do something about this stressful experience here. Matter of fact, there's a really nice quote about how resentment plays a role in this. It says, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Isn't that true? I mean, they have no clue that it's happening, right? I mean, they're away somewhere, but that poison is actually eating us up inside. So we really got to change the situation. So in changing it, we've got to recognize that if we stay caught in the cycle of conflict, it won't work. Let's look at change for a moment. Here's what I'd like for you to do. Look around you and become part of a pair and have one of you be A and the other B. Figure out who you are, A or B. A's. Could I see all the A's in the room, by the way? A's, 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 A's. Now, A's, here's what I want you to do. Now, don't do it yet, but when I ask you to, A's, I want you to make a fist as tight as you can. Now, don't hit anybody with it, you know. Just make your fist. Okay, B's, could I see your hand? B's, 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 B's. Okay, B's, good. B's, here's what I want you to do, B's. I'm going to give you 20 seconds, B's, to get A to open their fist any way you can. A's, make your fist as tight as you can. B's, you have 20 seconds. Go! That's great. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay. Y'all are having much too much fun with this exercise, I think. Okay, let me find out how many people actually got your partner to open their fist and the techniques you used. How many actually got your partner? About 10%. Okay, that's pretty normal. Let me find out the techniques you used. How many of you used the tickle technique? Anybody? Yes, tickle technique. That's always a lot of fun. How many of you used the bribe technique? Anybody try the bribe technique? Yes, that's a very popular one. Now, did anybody try the bribe technique and it not work? Okay, great. All right. Now, there's only one reason the bribe technique does not work. Not enough money, right? I mean, pull out $500, that hand's going to fly right open. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should bribe or pay difficult people to be nice to us. I'm just wanting you to know that when you have used the bribe technique successfully, here's what you've actually done. You've tapped into their internal motivation to hear what you have to say as valuable to them. Going to use that later on. File that in the back of your mind. How many of you used the force and pain technique? I saw a lot of that, yeah. That was by the way, that is the most popular technique. And let me show you the result of that. Everybody make a fist as tight as you can. Tight, tight, tight. Now, if someone were to come along and actually try to force your fist open, what would your reaction be? Tighter. Ooh. Are you saying that whenever we try to force someone to change, what we're actually doing is motivating them to resist us even more? Ooh. I call this the lesson of the fist. The lesson of the fist may be one of the most important things you're going to hear about dealing with difficult people. The lesson of the fist says that whenever we try to force someone to change, they will either resist us or resent us or both, and as a result become more motivated to defend their position. And I think that is so important to recognize. Now, we got to deal with this situation, but we can't deal with it by trying to change them first. So what do? I suggest we raise our awareness of what's really going on here. There's a great quote that speaks to that. By Albert Einstein, it says, "Problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them." That's important because I think when we're caught in the cycle of conflict, that's what we're trying to do. We're almost trying to solve the problem at the same level of awareness that created them, i.e., we think they made us mad, they think we made them mad, here we go. So what we're going to do is actually raise our awareness of what's really going on here. Now, a lot of people think it is the facts or what happens to us that actually causes our experience of life. I'm going to suggest, however, it's not so much the facts. The facts do play a role. They are actually filtered through our beliefs, and it is our beliefs that create our experience of life. Let me give you an example. You know, a long time ago, most of the people on the planet believed that the world was flat, right? Now, the facts were, of course, the world was round, but everybody believed it was flat. Now, when a ship sailed out and didn't come back, what did they think? Fell off the edge of the earth. You see, our beliefs create our interpretations, or how we give meaning to whatever it is we see. A lot of times our interpretations are much more congruent with our beliefs than they are with the facts. So, they believed the world was flat. Ship sailed out too far, must have fallen off the edge of the earth. They would expect, therefore, that if another ship sailed out too far, it too would fall off the edge of the earth, right? Our beliefs and interpretations create our expectations, what we expect to happen next. Based on this expectation that a ship was going to fall off the edge of the earth, we would probably be kind of concerned, if not frightened, about getting on ships, right? Our expectations create our emotions, how we feel about things. Based on this fear of getting on ships of concern, what we would do is then we would probably avoid ships. You see, our emotions create our behaviors. And what we would think, because we had avoided ships based on this belief that the world is flat, is that, see, we are safe. Because we know the world is flat, I'm not getting on a ship, and therefore our behaviors, emotions, expectations, interpretations then go to reinforce our beliefs. So, once we have established how powerful our beliefs are, let's look at what beliefs are underlying the cycle of conflict. Let's look at them first. Now, I think it's important here to recognize we're going to be talking about two types of difficult people. There is the acutely difficult person, and there's the chronically difficult person. Now, the acutely difficult person is probably like us, right? And we've all been there. Something bad happened. We got yelled at. We had a flat tire, and we just kind of snapped at people. We became that acutely difficult person. I don't think that's the real problem in our lives. I think the real problem is the chronically difficult person, right? Who's been this way almost all their life and is pretty much this way to everybody they meet. Let's look at what beliefs might be underlying them if they are a chronically difficult person. For instance, what do you think this person believes about the world in general? Safe or unsafe? Unsafe. Yeah, they think people are out to get them, right? Now, what do you think this person believes about the concept of trust and cooperation? Now, this is kind of tricky. What do you think this person believes about themselves? High self-esteem or low self-esteem? Low, exactly. They may act high, but what that is really a sign that they're feeling bad about themselves, low self-esteem. Now, one of the characteristics of low self-esteem, when someone has low self-esteem, they think there's something wrong with them. So this person thinks there's something wrong with them, and guess what? We agree with them, don't we? Tell you, yes sir, there's something wrong with you, which may not be working for us, you see, because if we react to them in a way that reinforces their beliefs about the world, that the world is an unsafe place, that people are out to get them, and that trust and cooperation are dangerous, and that there's something wrong with them, if our behavior, our reaction reinforces those beliefs, we are reinforcing the very behavior we're trying to get them to change.